Welcome to The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. Here's your host, the biggest record nerd of them all, Nate Goyer.
Well, hey everyone, it's Nate. Welcome to episode 549 of The Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. And dear people, this week we are welcoming to the show filmmaker, documentarian, punk rock fan, record collector, Dave Markey. Dave joins us on the show, and we start off talking about record collecting, but we quickly get into the thick of his new documentary on Bill Bartell, one of the punk scene's most fascinating, mysterious, surprisingly influential behind-the-scenes character. I mean, Bill got his thumbs in many pies, from naming Iron Maiden albums to helping launch Billy Idol's solo career, to influencing Kurt Cobain and annoying the band Kiss to no end. Dave Markey reveals the incredible untold story of Bill Bartell in this documentary, The Secret Lives of Bill Bartell, punk rock's greatest unknown instigator. You can check out the film on Bill Bartell, available now on various streaming services, and there's a ton of extras on the DVD and Blu-ray, which you can get from wegotpowerfilms.com. Now, this week, I am getting ready to get on a plane over to Southern California. I'll be in the Pomona area at the Dr. Strange's Summer Bash Music Festival, May 23rd and 24th. Always good to see Rod and the Good Doctor over there. Tons of great bands. Just Google up Dr. Strange Summer Bash. Maybe there's some tickets left. I know it was selling out quite fast. I'll probably be at the Circle Jerks Ventura show on May 22nd. And of course, I'll be at the Austin Record Fair, May 29, 30, 31st. If you are in or around the Austin Record Fair, give me a DM. Let's connect. We'll do some barbecue, maybe a margarita. Would love to say hi. And that's my exciting schedule. I can't do too long of an upfront today because I got to go pack. Again, appreciate everyone who's been sharing these episodes online. And of course, those of you who are supporting us at patreon.com/vinylguide. You guys are absolute legends. Alrighty, enough of the jibber jabber. Let's talk to Dave Markey all about the secret lives of Bill Bartell. You all good? You got your big cup of coffee there?
Mm-hmm.
Good on you. Now, do you know much about the show, Dave?
I've heard a few of them.
Okay, all right. So you know we do some record nerd talk.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Are you a record nerd?
Yeah. I have a decent collection. I don't know if I define myself as a vinyl nerd anymore because I kind of stopped buying, but I still have my collection, which is pretty large. And, these days I have all of my stuff digitized. I listen to it on devices, and that's easier. I still have a turntable. I still have my collection. I spin vinyl every now and then, but I don't buy it the way I used to when I was younger.
One of the reasons probably is it's got pretty prohibitively expensive.
Yes. I mean, even the records you used to get for like 99 cents are all like $20 now. It's a different world. And
probably some of the records you and I like that used to get for 20 cents are now $2,000.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, a lot of records I have are very valuable that I got, when they came out, and you know how it goes.
Yeah. So, okay. So if we talk
is
about
this going to be audio primarily, or
audio primarily. Yeah.
Do you use the video for like promo or stuff?
Here and there, but for the most part, I always kind of think, I don't know how many people really want to watch two old men talk on YouTube. So yeah. I stay with the audio only, and unless there was some big reason, show and tell sometimes, but even that is kind of strange. So yeah, I tend to be more of an audio leaning podcast.
Okay. Let me know when you want to start, or have we started?
I think we've started.
We're on. This is the content. We are creating content now.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. So going on about your record collection, is there, I'm sure there's some records that not just valuable, but I mean emotionally connected to, like a few records that may have been given to you from artists or have particular memories associated with them?
Quite a few. records that I got from I remember buying the first few New Alliance records from D-Boon personally at this punk club in the Valley called Godzilla's. He sold me the Minutemen Joy EP and the Descendents Fat EP for $1 each. And I carried them that night at that show in my hand. And then, records like that, the EPs, the 45s, the 7-inches, to me are even more especially precious because many times I bought them from band members. Ian MacKaye was selling the first Minor Threat 7-inch at Okie Dogs at 1 a.m, and I bought one from him and I still have it. Stuff like that. I have that story going on and on and on. And it's just those, punk, hardcore 7-inches, especially.
I've got a few records that kind of have a similar history with an artist. And I'm kind of thinking about writing that story down and sliding it in the sleeve with the record. Because when I'm not around anymore, who's going to even know that this came from the hand of so-and-so?
Well, that's part of, I think, I was collecting records before I would have even labeled myself as a collector, per se. I just stuff that I had to have, especially in that period in 80, 81 through, maybe 84. And I also did a fanzine, and I would get lots of records in the mail for review. And it's funny because a lot of records I've sold over the years, there's certain records that I got that I would just never sell for any price. And, a lot of it is that stuff from that time.
Do you remember a time before punk rock?
Oh, I do. Yeah. I remember in the 70s when I used to buy 7-inch singles, again, with the 7-inches. You would buy the hit single that 93 KHJ was playing, like War, Cisco Kid, or Hot Butter Popcorn, or whatever it was, Elton John, Crocodile Rock. I still have those records.
I had that one too, with the black label, and on the other side, hang on, Crocodile Rock, and I want
Elderberry Wine.
That's right. Oh.
Yeah, and the Sweet Little Willie with the Bell label.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember all those early records that I first bought when I bought records as a kid. A lot of them, and I still have them. A lot of them are unplayable, but I hold on to them for the sentimental value.
So I guess you strike me as someone, you've captured all this history on film. You've recorded quite a bit yourself as well on record, and you still have your record collection. You're almost like a born archivist. You find, you've been seeing value in these sort of things and moments really since, all your life. Is that fair?
A bit, sure. Yeah. Other people have giant super collections that take up entire rooms. I'm not that, but I have what I have, and what I have and what I've held on to, the stuff that obviously, marks times in my life.
Mm-hmm.
As most records do.
So Dave, there's so much we could talk about, and I definitely want to spend time on this Bill Bartell documentary. I've seen it a couple times now. I had the screener on the laptop, and then I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I need it on the big screen. So we rented a version of it, and my wife and I watched it. Neither of us were really that familiar with Bill Bartell. We'd heard the name here and there. I think we have friends in common, but we didn't grow up in Los Angeles. So for people who may not be familiar with Bill Bartell, how do you summarize him?
Well, I made this movie for people that don't know Bill. I certainly did not make this movie for me and my circle of friends and the few hundred white flag fans that are out there, or fans of that era in Southern California music. I tried to make a movie about Bill as a person and tell his story. And I was well aware that Bill Bartell is not a huge pop culture figure. I mean, he's a cult figure for sure, but I made this film to tell the world who he was. And I made it for people like you and your wife who wouldn't have known, who he was. So I made the movie with that in mind, for sure.
Well, absolutely hit the target. Now we're extremely fascinated about him. So how would you describe Bill?
Well, Bill was pretty fascinating as a character. You couldn't really, most people you can read pretty well. A lot of people you can get who they are within 5 minutes of meeting them, right? Bill was the opposite. Bill just had layers of persona and things, parts of his life, who he was, but he was many different people to many different people. And that caught me in the 90s. Like, we were all friends with Bill, our friends, but like no one really knew still who he was after knowing him for well over a decade at that point. And some point in the early mid 90s, I was like, I have to make a documentary film on Bill. And because he lived his life in such a way that, he was very secretive, and he did all these different things. He wore a lot of different hats. I just wanted to peel all that back. And I tried to make this film at that point when he was still with us, and he wasn't having it at all. He was not cooperating. So
you made your intention clear to him. You're like, dude, we got to get this.
And I even had the title back then. And I was going to call it The Secret Life of Bill Bartell. It changed to Secret Lives for this, but it's the same idea. And because, I don't know, a film I would have made at that point wouldn't have been this film, clearly, because this film was made with many years of reflection. And I started making it 10 years after he had passed on, so I just thought that he did so much and he was really responsible for so many things, but yet no one really knew who he was. And it was just screaming to me that the story needed to be told.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. So, again, I want to make sure I don't blow the movie for different people, but is a guy who was raised in California, small town, got involved in the early punk scene, Germs and X and those sort of bands, started his band White Flag, which immediately was mocking the then popular Black Flag in multiple ways. He's an absolute instigator, but he was also at the core of so many breakouts. He ingratiated himself into the company of people that would be, Yoko Ono and people like that. He was just able to talk his way into any room and situation.
Steve Harris from Iron Maiden.
Tell me about that, because that wasn't in the film, the Iron Maiden bit.
Well, the DVD has an hour of bonus material. It there was so much that I couldn't get into one feature film. And I knew that the extras on this were just going to be, the tits, because there's so many great stories, but a film is just more than a collection of great stories. I'm not just slapping stuff together. I'm grafting a narrative from, 75 hours of interviews and, 100 hours of archival footage and so forth. So it's like, there's a lot of stuff that I couldn't cut into the feature. And one of the great stories that I couldn't get in was Bill had a way of sneaking into shows by creating backstage passes. And this is explained in detail in the extra content. And this is how he would get into these arena rock shows, like during punk rock and before punk rock. He was able to get backstage and befriend many people. I mean, he stalked Kiss for years. Kiss was his main obsession. And you said something earlier that Bill was parodying and making fun of Black Flag. One distinction we should make is Bill wasn't just mocking. Bill had to love what he was mocking or parodying before he did so. And it was more of him paying tribute, but he did it in a really kind of crude way. And, on the surface, if you look at White Flag, Black Flag, you see that that's clearly a parody. But again, Bill only did that if he truly loved the source. So let's make that distinction. He did the same thing with the Beatles and Kiss and countless other bands. But he found himself backstage at Iron Maiden by faking a pass, and he befriended Steve Harris, the bassist of Iron Maiden. And not only did he name the 1980 or 81 Iron Maiden Japan live EP, that was Bill's name that he gave Steve Harris. Because Steve Harris had said, yeah, we had recorded some tracks in Japan, and Bill was like, you got to put that out. And Steve Harris was like, yeah, well, what would we call it? And Bill was like, Maiden Japan. He's like, Maiden Japan? No, Made in Japan. Because Bill was an expert with puns. He just was punning. That was his thing. So, Steve Harris obviously thought it was a great idea, and he named that record as per Bill's suggestion. Not only did he do that, but Bill Harris was admiring the outfit that Bill Bartell was wearing backstage, which was a two-piece black and white striped outfit, top and pants. And Bill's like, you like this? I'll give it to you. And Steve Harris took it, and he wears it in the Iron Maiden video for Run to the Hills. So not only is Bill, as like a 19-year-old, naming Iron Maiden albums, he's outfitting them for stage, And I mean, who does that? That's just sort of one of many stories of the influence that Bill had on people. Even if he wasn't necessarily super close, he had a way of getting in there and befriending and sort of winning the trust and, influencing, the people that he admired and sort of worshiped, on the rock and roll stage. And funny enough, Bill didn't really see a distinction between the Scorpions and the Germs. To Bill, it was all, it was all about the music and the performance and the persona. And, he loved it all. He was a metal guy. He was a punk guy. He was a pop guy, primarily, really. And he was really driven by his interests and his obsessions. And he really left this invisible mark on culture that I thought needed highlighting.
Yeah. And the more the movie goes on, the more of these incredible moments come to life. It also struck me that he would provoke people quite, happily, regularly. But what did he dislike? Genuinely, what did he dislike?
I think he disliked people that he thought were faking it or were phoning it in. I mean, he loved to approach people, whether he admired them or not, and let them know his innermost feelings about the person. For example, he runs into, oh my God, I'm blanking on the name, singer of Journey, Steve
Perry.
Yeah. He runs into Steve Perry at a pizza joint, and he walks up to him and goes, "Congratulations, you were responsible for the worst night of my life. I hate you. Your band sucks." And just, hi, how you doing? He did the same thing to so many artists, even artists that he loved, he would, no filter, no, he was a critic, and he let people know to their face. He let Beck know right away upon meeting Beck. And I happened to be there. I was with Thurston Moore, Kim Gordon, and Mike D of the Beastie Boys at this party. The Beastie Boys had a clothing store at the time in Los Angeles called X Large. And I think it might have even been the opening party for their store. And Beck walks up and starts chatting, and Thurston introduces Bill to Beck. And of course, Bill just turns to Beck and says, "I don't like you." Just saying what maybe some people might be feeling, but would never have the nerve to say, because, it's beyond like being rude. It was just like, I don't know. I think Bill was very suspicious of the rock and roll fame factory, as it were. And he just enjoyed calling people out, whether he was right or wrong. And this was a young Beck, by the way. I think maybe this was right when the Loser single had come out on an independent label, prior to Beck's signing to Geffen, prior to Beck being the huge artist that he became. And I think, that really sort of affected Beck at the time. And, that's not anything I would have done. And I mean, I happen to really like Beck and like his music, and especially as he went on as an artist and developed. And, I thought that was just kind of uncalled for. But then again, you're in the company of someone that does that, you're part of the stink bomb. So,
but yeah, it struck me as that he would do these sort of things, from what I understand.
He could not help himself. He was sort of like Andy Kaufman in that way, where it was almost like a performance art. Like everything that he did was a performance, and he was going to have his say. And, he was sort of a little guy, not really, I don't think he could defend himself very well in a fight. And it always blew me away that he just didn't get punched out, because anyone else would have. Something about Bill and his aura prevented that. Why? I don't know. I'm not quite sure.
I've had friends that, certainly not on the level of Bill, but have been able to, again, ingratiate themselves to people in the room, and bouncers and things. That bouncers, they tolerate very little shit from most people, but they will laugh, and they'll strike up a conversation with particular characters and even start looking out for them a bit. I don't know what that is I don't even know how to describe it.
Yeah. I mean, other people would have been thrown out. I mean, Bill did get thrown out. I mean, famously, Kiss, he'd been stalking Kiss for years. And he would show up at their press conferences, and he would be the one raising his hand, asking embarrassing questions. And, Gene and Paul would just sort of look at him and go, "Oh, you again," and roll their eyes. In fact, there's a story where Bill is backstage at some event, and he's hanging out with his friend, Sean Lennon, who he managed to befriend. And Sean liked Bill because Bill liked Yoko. And of course, and then Bill and Yoko, of course, became friends. And Bill was paying tribute to Yoko with his project, The Tater Tots, and covering Yoko songs. And of course, that 1988 Beatlefest performance, which is in the film, which we see, where he leads this 15-minute noise jam of Yoko Ono, Plastic Ono Band, Don't Worry, Kyoko, to a room of 2,000, Beatle fans that are just not having it. And it's one of the funniest things in the film. And it's one of the things that people that don't know Bill see in the film. So many people have come up to me and told me afterwards, that's my favorite bit in the film. Like, that endears Bill to people who have no idea who he was, because He had the nerve to do what he was going to do. And if it was going to be even just, almost on the verge of causing a riot, which that performance really did, it was teetering on complete chaos. And, I think as Jennifer Schwartz says in the film, chaos, that's where Bill thrived. He loved to create chaos in a room. And in that sense, to me, he was the ultimate punk rocker.
Yeah. The contrarian.
Yeah. I mean, beyond Johnny Lydon. In fact, he tried out for Pill in, I think it was like 1981, and Pill was looking for a guitar player. And Bill, this isn't even in the bonus features. This is not even in the film, but this is the story I will share with you now. And they were jamming on some live song that Pill had done. I don't know the track, but they were jamming on it. And famously, there was an edit that was done in the song that was piecing performance together. And Bill played the guitar part with the edit. And Lydon noticed it and, said, "Ha ha, funny man," and pointed out to Bill. Because Lydon did not like being out-punked by Bill. He was just, And it's funny because if Bill would have ended up joining Pill at that time, we wouldn't have had White Flag. But I mean, I think, again, that's Bill, the more obscure it was, the detail that only a few super fans would know, that would be Bill. Bill would know that Gene Simmons had warehouses full of a particular brand of soda, and he would ask him questions about it. And Gene Simmons would be back to Bartell going like, "How do you know about this? How did he know?" And this was, years before the internet, years before information was readily available. Bill was like the internet before the internet. He just had this pop culture mind that was filled with information, and no one was quite sure where all that information came from.
I'd love to see a conversation with Bill Bartell and Nardwuar.
Yeah. People have pointed out that there's similar traits there, and they have mutual friends that we've just discussed this in length. I think they would have probably ended up strangling each other.
It kind of struck me as, armchair psychologist here. A lot of people tend to project what they feel in different situations. And, Bill had all these segments of his life, and it was almost like he was a performance artist throughout his day. So when he approaches someone like a Beck or a Steve Perry or someone like that, does he think they're doing something similar?
Well, they're putting themselves out there. They're putting themselves on stage. They're creating. They were doing what Bill wanted to do and did. So there's that. As I was making the film, I was thinking along the lines of psychology and how this film would be a great study for psych students. Like, show this film to budding psych students and have them do their analyses, because it's multi-layered. You could talk yourself to death on it, and will you get to the end of it? Probably not. It's just sort of who Bill was and how he lived his life and how he was just driven on such a level that was just beyond anyone that I had ever known.
When you're collecting this footage, and there's so many interviews in there, I'm sure you must have, I'll say, thousands of hours of of interviews and stories, and a lot of them are very different. Everyone had a different experience with Bill. So how do you go about making, what is it? It's 90 minutes. How do you?
It's over 90 minutes. I was aiming for 90 minutes, and it's like 101 minutes.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit longer. than your average running length on a dock. I mean, again, there's just so much to try to cram in there. And I worked on it in pieces. I worked on it in segments. I created something that made sense to me as I was putting it together. Any given topic, I would string together in the timeline of my edit list, and if they're talking about this, I would lay all the stuff out, and then I would find stuff, segues that seem to flow seamlessly between the various people relating the story, and in a way that is if you were having a conversation with friends about something in a very sort of casual, natural manner. And that was what I was aiming to do. And you want to make something that's going to connect, and you want to make something that's going to connect to a larger story. So it was a challenge editing this stuff because there was so much material to work from. And like I said earlier, even if the story was great and hilarious, if it didn't work in to the master narrative I was grafting, I would have to set it aside and make it its own thing.
Yeah,
this is why the bonus material, this is why the DVD and Blu-ray is so crucial for this film. Because if you enjoy the film, you will really get off on the stuff that I couldn't put in it, because there's this stuff that's even crazier and more unbelievable, and just painting this portrait of this artist that you just could not peg down. If you had a million pegs, you couldn't do it. So it was a real challenge, and I really kind of enjoyed the process of putting it all together, because it was so difficult, and it was a story of someone that I knew and I was close to and loved, and also had so many fallings out with over the years. You were not a friend of Bill. You were not a close friend unless you did not speak to him for big chunks of time at a time. It just was part and parcel to the relationship. Every one of his super close friends would relate and know what I'm talking about. And it's just that he was a difficult person to stay friends with all the time. You couldn't. It just, the dark side of the way Bill lived his life, which we start to see more of as the film progresses and ultimately ends. I think we really see it at that point in the film, and the price that Bill paid for living his life in this way.
What do you think Bill would think of the film?
I think he would love the fact that people are talking about him, and but at the same time, he would hate it. He would hate it. He would hate the fact that some of the magician tricks were being revealed, and but at the same time, I think he ultimately needed people to be talking about him. And I mean, honestly, the things that he did, the ability that he had to connect people, to bring disparate people together, to create, to further what these artists were doing with their work, it's just immense. It's just, and I don't think, because he was such a shadowy character, and I just think, I mean, I learned a lot of things about Bill, and I knew him very well for over 30 years. And the things that I learned during the making of this film, I wasn't even aware. I didn't know about the Billy Idol story. I did not know that Bill had befriended Kiss's manager, Bill a coin. And Bill was a huge Generation X fan. He loved that first album when it came out. And the band was not touring the States. And Bill really wanted to see the band. So Bill's plan was to talk up Generation X to his friend, manager, Bill a coin, saying, there's this hot band out of England. You got to go check them out. They're called Generation X. And Bill a coin did. Bill a coin went and seeked out and saw Generation X. And of course, he started managing them. In that process, the band fell apart. And Derwent Andrews is in the film from Generation X. And he tells the story that, the band was already sort of suffering the things that a lot of bands go through, where the front man's persona was sort of eclipsing the band in a way. So I think Bill a coin saw the star in Billy Idol and, of course, facilitated that happening. Like, if it not had been for Bill Bartell talking up Generation X to Bill a coin, it's arguable that Billy Idol would not have had the massive career that he had. Would Bill a coin have discovered them without Bill Bartell? I don't think so. And this is something that Billy Idol wasn't even aware of. And it was funny because there was an interview on Damon Abrams' show, Turned Out a Punk, where he's interviewing Billy Idol, and he brings this piece of information to a sort of stunned Billy Idol, who did not know and probably had never even heard of Bill Bartell or who Bill Bartell was or what Bill Bartell did in this equation. So again, the 101 reasons why this film had to be made. And I didn't see anyone else taking up the reins to do it. And I don't think anyone else could have done the same film that I did, because it is a very personal story, and it comes from knowing Bill in real life. And could there have been another documentary on Bill that someone else could have made? Sure. But would it have been this film? I don't think so.
No. I mean, who even knew, much less had the chutzpah to do it. Who did you want to have in the film, but weren't able to? What are some of those missing pieces?
There's a few people that were key that we had reached out to, and both parties had agreed to do an interview. And I'm speaking of Pat Smear and Drew Barrymore, who are both very busy people. One has a daily TV talk show. The other one is in a huge rock band that's, constantly out on the road. And Pat Smear famously turns down interviews in films. He was asked to be in the Go-Go's documentary. He turned it down. He was asked to be in countless Nirvana documentaries. He just says no. Pat does not like seeing himself as a talking head in a documentary. He can't stand it. But I was surprised that, he originally had agreed to do the film, but it just didn't work out. Same with Drew, due to their schedules, and there was just so much back and forth. And it would have been great if we would have had their input in the film, but it didn't happen. And also, I feel it would have been nice to have, at least Paul Stanley in the film. I don't know.
I was thinking Gene Simmons would have been amazing.
Because they knew who he was, and they really did not like him. And they famously, because we do interview Rebecca Severin of the band Frightwig and her new band Fingernail. She worked for Kiss in their later years, for many years, as a costumer. and she was a witness to Kiss's security detail handing out Xeroxed photos of Bill that Gene and Paul had distributed, saying to their bouncers, if you see this guy backstage, throw him out. Because they didn't want to be annoyed by him for the 100th time. And they knew that he had a way of getting anywhere that Bill wanted to go. He could envision himself getting there and doing it. And
that's amazing. So they had those pictures, do not let this guy in. And he looks like Bill Coyne, the manager.
Right. Well, there's a portrait. I think if you look at the disc on the DVD or the Blu-ray, there's a photo of Bill, and he's playing guitar on stage. And his guitar strap has Japanese writing on it. And what it says in Japanese is Bill Coyne on his guitar strap. Bill Bartell used to carry around in his wallet photos of Bill Coyne. Like, you want to look at my child here, Bill Coyne. Bill Bartell's mustache was clearly patterned after Bill Coyne. So many things, so many crazy things that, as the film plays, as it goes on, it's just like I would guess that the average person watching it going, there's just no way. This has got to be a put on. This can't be real. If this were a fictional character, no one would buy it. If this were someone writing a novel, you got to tone that down. There's no way.
You would believe it. But
no human being would do this.
What's even funnier, again, it just folds into itself. Bill Coyne is kind of the boss of Kiss, right? Sure. And Bill Bartell modeled himself after him to be the boss of the band. So again, there's this kind of authority connection with Bill Coyne. And the fact that Gene and Paul couldn't stand Bill Bartell, but Bill Coyne listened to him to the point of traveling internationally and seeking out bands and recommendations.
Right. And let's not forget, Bill Bartell also had a record label, Gasotanker Records, which was a clear play on Casablanca Records, Kiss's record label at the time. And not only Kiss's record label, but the Village People's record label. And Bill was equally obsessed with the Village People. So
Randy Moss, is it Randy Moss? That's
Randy Jones.
Randy Moss, a football player. Randy Jones of the Village People.
Cowboy and the Village People.
Yeah. Did Bill Bartell and Randy have any connection? Did they ever meet? Do you know?
Yes. Randy Jones showed up to a 1984 White Flag performance in New York City at Danceteria. This I know for a fact from people that were there. And funny enough, that bill, it was White Flag supporting my film at the time, Desperate Teenage Love Dolls, which was screening in New York City for the first time at Danceteria. So it was the movie and White Flag and Adrenaline OD from New Jersey, who were friends of White Flags and Bill's. And also on a compilation record myself and Jordan Schwartz put out in 1983, We Got Power, our fanzine, did this compilation called Party Go Home. And Adrenaline OD had given us a track for that. And that record famously has 40 bands, 20 bands aside, doing a minute-long song each. And yes, I mean, that was one of the many projects that I had done over the years.
Yeah.
Did a lot of punk compilations, and that one's one of the more fun ones for sure.
I'm fascinated by the
and Bill ended up putting out our next record after that was 1984, the soundtrack to Desperate Teenage Love Dolls, came out on Gasotanker Records, featured White Flag, Red Cross. It was all our friends group extended, and
Mm-hmm. There was that 45, that white.
Yeah. I ended up taking the cover photo of Red Cross's Teen Babes from Monsanto EP, which Bill Bartell put out on Gas the Tanker Records that year as well, in '84. So, if you want to look at the lineage here, the family tree of all of this, there's so much interrelated stuff going on throughout the whole thing. And it's it's a lot. Bill was a lot. So, but again, we were all in the same scene doing all sorts of stuff. So
now you started making films fairly early. I see the DIY ethos in We Got Power Films very similar to like an SST or a Discord. You guys just went out and just did it, and you learned along the way. So I would imagine SST was a big influence on you, just not only the music, but how they went about their business.
Yeah, I was absorbed in that fold at some point in the mid 80s. Along with Jordan Schwartz, ended up working there, working for Chuck Dukowski and his touring network that he formed at the time, Global, which was exclusively booking SST acts. And Jordan ended up going and working for them. And then my second band at the time, Painted Willie, ended up getting signed by SST and going on a 6-month tour with Black Flag in 1986, which happened to be the final tour for Black Flag at that time, ending their 10-year run from 1976 to 1986. And prior to that, of course, we grew up with all of those bands and we're fans of all of those bands. Played shows with a lot of them. That was a really kind of heady scene to be a part of. And so much great music, especially the earlier half of the 80s when it was all when it was all copacetic and good, before it all sort of, the latter part of the 80s, it all just sort of imploded, right? But there's no doubt that label, the importance of that label, of course, that's pretty well documented.
Yeah. It's interesting how, again, you started off as a zine. You wanted to, and what I'm reading into it is you were a mega fan. You had a lot of energy, creativity. You wanted to contribute. Films probably wasn't an option at that point.
I was making films before.
Oh, okay.
I started as a kid in Santa Monica making regular 8mm movies before I graduated to Super 8 and Super 8 sound. So I had years of just making small films in my neighborhood, years of practice making films as a kid. So that was my first passion before I even got involved in music. Music was sort of a sidetrack that, that sort of took me away from film for years. And then I sort of, at some points, combined the two, like with the Slog movie in 1981, 82. Again, it was sort of both. It was sort of a combination of film, fanzine, and music, because my band is also included in that. That band would have been Sin 34, the first band that I got involved with. Was playing shows before I even knew how to play drums, and graduating high school, forming that band, starting We Got Power fanzine, started shooting the Slog movie at the same time. So I'm doing all the stuff at the same time. And like I said, pre-punk, I was sort of already doing that DIY thing. And I wouldn't have known what DIY was because
you're just getting shit done.
Well, that's what I was. Found out later there was a name for it.
Very industrious. Well, that first Sin 34 LP, Spinhead Records, which I assume is yours, and
No, that was not mine. That was Phil's, the bass player. But I mean,
okay.
I helped out with it, and also helped build the studio that Spinhead became a studio for a while in North Hollywood. A lot of bands played and recorded there, and we did all the recordings for Love Doll Superstar there, and Painted Willie did all the recordings they did there. So yeah, I mean, again, there's just there's so much going on, and I look back now in a brief period of time, like maybe 81 to about 85. Again, it was doing so many things at once. You know,
Right.
being a musician, being a photographer, being a filmmaker, being a documentarian, just being a creative and just doing it. And I did so much in that period. It's dense of activity, projects. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it wasn't until the mid 80s where that really sort of upped a level when I got sort of enveloped in the SST world.
Mm-hmm. Now, with the recordings of Painted Willie, the ones on SST, have you guys ever gotten the rights back to those?
Well, the Painted Willie as a band fell apart in the later part of the 80s. 1988, it was over. There was a couple lineup changes in that band. Originally, the first two Painted Willie records were put out on Spinhead. There was a 7-inch and a 12-inch. The 7-inch was just Painted Willie, 3-song EP. The second one was My Fellow Americans. Those Spinhead Painted Willie records, I think, are the best stuff that the band did. And then the band sort of shifted gears, changed lineups, got a different guitar player. And in 1985, recorded the first record for SST. And that was, the band sort of shape shifted. And then the second album that Painted Willie did for SST, that was very different from the first. Mind Bowling to Upside Downtown, very different records. And Upside Downtown was the end result of being on the road with Black Flag for 6 months. You can hear that in that record, the influence of that band. But for me, I prefer the early stuff before we got involved with SST. I think the band had a stronger identity at that point, and then
so you really don't care. You don't really connect with that.
Awesome.
With the
well, I mean, I just sort of moved on from that. I don't really, concern myself with the SST Painted Willie stuff. So yeah. I mean, I know a lot of bands have gotten their records back.
Yeah.
Dinosaur, Pea Puppets, Sonic Youth.
Anyone who could afford a decent lawyer, I think, has been able to do that. That's always been the pattern that, at least as an outsider, seems to be apparent.
Yeah, once Phil Newman passed away, who was Spinhead Studios, Spinhead Records, bass player, Sin 34, Painted Willie. When he passed away, all that sort of stuff for me just, wow, big crack of thunder outside.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Phil's listening. To me, that I just sort of let it ride at that point.
Yeah, fair enough. So Bill Bartell, The Secret Lives of Bill Bartell, that you have a DVD and a Blu-ray. Are those orderable shipping at this point?
Yes.
Or okay. And where
MVDshop.com. MVDshop.com.
I'm gonna
You-
put that link in this episode page. So what? So what is
And
on?
also, next week, MVD is re-releasing both of the Love Dolls films on one Blu-ray with, again, an hour of bonus material on that. Those are 4K rebuilds that I did, high-res, modern day standard looking films from the original Super 8 film.
So you've had your whole back catalog kind of backed up, restored, digitally
not all of it,
secured.
not all of it,
Okay.
but a good chunk of it. You know, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. But you know, I've been working pretty diligently on both of the Love Dolls films, and over the past few years, even while I was still working on the Bill film, once I finished the Bill film, I really finished up all those projects, and you know, got the restorations done, and that's just about to come out, and that's pretty exciting too. Desperate Teenage Love Dolls, Love Doll Superstar, one Blu-ray disc. And of course, both of the films will be hitting the streaming platforms. The Bill film is hitting the streaming platforms. I just got word that the Criterion channel is not only going to take the Bill film, they're also going to be exhibiting both of the Love Dolls films. So, in a sense, right now, more people are set up to see my work than ever before. And because of streaming media, it has a way of getting to people above and beyond what physical media could do, you know.
Yeah. Within minutes, I was watching it from Australia. So, I mean, that must be odd and satisfying to you as a filmmaker, especially after decades in the business of being able. Now, your work is being celebrated. Some of these films that were seen as very strange early on are now being coveted and appreciated. You know, what's your response?
Because I think now, I think they can be completely reassessed for what they are, because the technical limitations of the past are no more, and a lot of those VHS versions or even the DVD versions of those films, the film transfers weren't great. They didn't look good to begin with. You know, there was a problem seeing the stuff, hearing it, but all of that has been rendered, and now the films are presentable in a way that they never have been. They're still the films themselves, but they just look and sound worlds better, and I think can be seen by a whole new audience of people, anyone that's interested in alternative culture or independent cinema or anything, punk rock, whatever you want to call it. I think you know, it is sort of satisfying in a way to see this come together, but it is the end result of many years of a lot of hard work. So,
Well, one thing I noticed, and I was going to bring it up to you, in the Bill Bartell movie, the presence in all the interviews, or majority of interviews, of Bill's guitar. Talk to me about that choice. And I mean, I don't know where the guitar, you had to carry that guitar to all the different interviews.
okay, that actually wasn't Bill's guitar, but a replica that Brian Kehoe, my producer on the film and my partner on the film, Brian Kehoe actually is very responsible for me making this movie. He was the one that came to me and got me reignited on this long dormant project of mine from the 90s. And he worked with me on the film. He was with me when we conducted all of the interviews. And he even did a couple interviews where I wasn't present. He did one in England when I wasn't there. He did one in Seattle when I wasn't there. So yeah, definitely have to mention Brian Kehoe and his connection to Bill and the film. He was also a friend of Bill's, and he also understood the importance of sharing Bill's story with the world or anyone that would listen, you know. So yeah, and Brian's done an incredible amount of things. He's just published a book on Brian Epstein, and I mean he's done a lot of work. He's been working with the Who for years. He has his own recording studio round and wound out in Burbank, North Hollywood, about a block away from Spinhead Studios, where Spinhead Studios used to reside. He was in the Moog cookbook. He has produced hundreds of bands and projects and for major labels, everyone from the Stooges to Fleetwood Mac. So, yeah, Brian Q is that guy that actually you should talk to at some point on your podcast.
I'd love to. So any idea where Bill's actual guitar is?
Bill Bartell's Flying V, blue Flying V guitar is hanging on the wall of Marty Martin's home in Moreno Valley. And I saw it when we did that interview with Marty from White Flag. And he was able to get that and was really happy to see that guitar was found, because a lot of Bill's material, a lot of Bill's stuff when he passed away, Bill's brother had just tossed and gotten rid of. And apparently Bill's home was broken into and a lot of guitars were stolen after he had passed away. So a lot of Bill artifacts are lost to the world, sadly. But the guitar, the actual real Flying V. But this guitar that Brian bought was signed by everyone in the film, and it now resides in the Punk Rock Museum in Las Vegas, Nevada.
I'll have to pay it a visit next time I'm there. I love that place. Were you the connection between Bill and Kurt Cobain?
Not really. I mean, maybe, you know, we maybe sort of met around the same time, or maybe Bill met a little bit after. But yeah, I mean, I had met Kurt in '90 originally through Sonic Youth, and pre Nirvana, Sonny to Geffen, and pre 1991, the year punk broke. All that, because Nirvana had been touring with Sonic Youth prior to that. And they did some shows in LA and on the West Coast that I traveled with, and with Sonic Youth, and I was shooting some material that ended up as music videos for Sonic Youth's Goo album around that time, the Mildred Pierce video and the Cinderella's Big Score video. And of course, the following year, Thurston had contacted me and asked if I would go on their European tour, their 2-week European tour with Nirvana, which was right before Nevermind was released. And I made that film, which documents Nirvana pre-fame. And yeah, I mean, that movie. Yeah, I mean, 10 years after the Slog movie, I see it as sort of a complementary film to the Slog movie. One's 1981, one's 1991. And the 10 years that went on in between it, the brewing of American underground rock, taking a nice decade there to ferment and happen. And then, of course, going from the underground into the mainstream, which happened. I mean, we don't really see in that film Nirvana's ascension, but we do see Nirvana win over giant festival crowds. Like in Reading, 1991, we see the reaction of the crowd, and we get an inkling of the success that Nirvana was about to have. But, the film ends before that record, the tour ended before that record came out.
Yeah.
Just a few weeks, really. And, and then their world changed pretty instantly. And our world changed pretty instantly at that point. And then I think in early 92, I think that's when Bill hooked up with Kurt. And I really believe that Courtney was responsible for that.
Oh, okay.
Bill was friends with Courtney. And I think, and of course, Bill, forever being the Os Mutantes obsessive that he was, he made some cassette tapes of the first 3 Os Mutantes record, gave them to Kurt. Kurt went on MTV in Brazil, eulogized Os Mutantes, thus revitalizing their long dormant career and reestablishing Os Mutantes on a international stage. And that was directly responsible for Bill. And of course, we see that in the film, right?
Yeah, another Zelig type moment.
Right. The punk rock Zelig. Again, it's funny because David Byrne came in and released a new Os Mutantes record, and then re-released all their old stuff, and to the world, it was a David Byrne discovery, but in actuality, it was Bill Bartell.
Yeah.
Yeah, and another one of the 101 reasons why this film exists. Because, I guess life is just sometimes like that. There's always the person that just gets brushed aside and doesn't get highlighted for what they actually did.
Yeah, but rarely does it all or multiple things like this revolve around a single person, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So yeah, again, a fascinating tale. When it comes to White Flag's records, they are exceedingly hard to find, especially in the States. I think in Europe they're a bit more accessible. Yeah. Do you have any knowledge?
White Flag was always really big in Europe for some reason. The States, they couldn't, they couldn't get arrested. That is until, of course, Bill became a real cop. But again, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Bill dressed up as a cop for years, of course, as stage wear, but then, is he a cop? Is he a real cop? Is he really a cop? All his friends were wondering, I was just using a euphemism that White Flag couldn't get arrested.
Yeah.
But, led into that conversation. But getting back to what we were talking about. Wait, what were we talking about?
Oh,
White Flag not being well distributed record-wise. The thing is, White Flag did like hundreds of records and inches and split 7 inches with many different bands and, put out records on record labels, in South America, in Australia, in the Faroe Islands, and in Iceland. It's like, I think for a record collector, White Flag would be the ultimate challenge. Maybe rivaling Sun Ra on a level of like, can you get these hundreds of obscure records? Good luck if you're a budding collector out there and you're looking for a band or an artist that's going to, ruin your life. Look up White Flag.
Dave, again, I'm so glad that I was introduced to Bill Bartell. What a character, man. And great conversation. Again, I'd love to have you back on. We didn't even really scratch the surface of the year that punk broke, but that could be for another day. Final question. Any idea where Bill got the money?
No. I think Bill was pulling from multiple scams at any given time. I think he I think he was running up a bit of credit card debt. I think that is part of the explanation. But I mean, his ever undying need to hop on a plane and travel around the other side of the world to see whatever band it was going to be that he needed to see, whether it was the Shags, whether it was the Monks, whether it was Led Zeppelin, whether it was Kiss, whether it was Blue Oyster Cult, whoever the obsessive of the moment was for Bill, he did not have any problems buying a plane ticket and getting himself there to that show. And that's sort of what he did. How he foot the bill, parts of it are still forever going to be a mystery. And Bill took those secrets with him to his grave. And we'll never really know the full of it, the whole of it. There's relations with people that Bill had that we'll never know, that we'll never be able to track down. There were people that are discussed in the film that we could not find any paper trail to. We did not have a full name. We did not know the identity of, couldn't trace. Would have been great for the film. But again, the way that Bill lived his life, cloaking himself in all of these mysteries and living in all these different compartments and different lives, it was, next to impossible to get to the bottom of all of it. You just couldn't. But yeah, I think Bill was really good at calling in favors. Bill was really good at, getting his band booked on European tours, getting opening slots for bands such as NoFX. Bill was really good at working his personal relationships with people. Bill knew how to pick up the phone and ask, and Bill did that. And that's, to his testimony to his will to spread his thing into the world. And he did what he could. And a lot of it remains a mystery.
That's what just makes a story so yummy. I don't know if I'm hearing 80% or 10%.
Sure. I'm not quite sure either. And this is, after spending many years focused on him.
What was the biggest surprise? What was the biggest surprise for you?
I think maybe the Billy Idol story, because I didn't know that. And I knew Bill so well, and I thought Bill would have shared that with me, because that's kind of proud. A proud moment. Like, why didn't Bill never tell me that? Like, about his relationship with Bill Aucoin and his ability to conjure up a massive career like Billy Idol's. I would be proud of that if I did that. And being a good friend of Bill and Bill never telling me that story. I don't know why Bill never shared that.
From the film, he didn't seem like a guy who would brag that much, though.
No, he wasn't. I think, like I said, he was a performance artist. No stage was too small. Often his performance was done strictly for one person at a time, whether it's Beck or Steve Perry or, Paul Stanley or what have you. Bill lived for Bill. Bill lived to get Bill off. And he achieved that very well. He had a good time. He had a good life.
I would imagine if of all his moments, maybe the only time that he may have been even the slightest bit intimidated may have been with Yoko Ono.
I think you're right. I think, first of all, I know he was thrilled to be 0 degrees separation from the Beatles. Like, that must have been his proudest moment by far. And he really loved Yoko. It wasn't just like, former wife of John Lennon. He truly loved Yoko and her work as an artist and beyond. And I think that was Bill's proudest moment.
Yeah. Do you know if he spent any time with any other Beatles?
I don't think so. I mean, I think, he was probably equally obsessed with, with George Harrison. He probably was equally obsessed with, with everyone else. McCartney, Lennon. I mean, I think, especially in later White Flag records, when Bill became the singer of the band, in addition to being the guitarist, and his songwriting really took on sort of a different shade. The early stuff is like hardcore punk, and then he really evolved into this sort of pop, Beatles, Lennon McCartney-esque inspired songwriting. And I think there was practically no music that Bill didn't love. And if Bill was into something, he was going to go all the way.
And he wanted everyone else in it too.
Wanted to, evangelize it to the world. And he did.
That's lovely.
Maybe it's taking the world a while to catch up and learn. Hopefully the film will be the conduit for such activity.
Oh, well, look, again, I want to put the links in this episode page. I think everyone should have a moment to not only see the trailer, but I think if you see the trailer, you're going to skip and get the full film. And then once you see the film, you're probably going to want the DVD and the Blu-ray with the extras because the mystery keeps unraveling. So I know I'm now curious. Again, links will be in this episode page. Dave, thanks for joining us. We didn't even get a chance to talk about one of my favorite. You did the video for one of my favorite songs ever, Bob Mould, The War.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God, I love that song.
I first met those guys in the early 80s, like when Husker Du first came to LA. Before they were on SST, they came to Santa Monica and hung out with us. And that's back when I was a kid living in an apartment with my mother in Santa Monica. And, Husker Du shows up to hang out. And, yeah. That Bob Mould video, 2014.
Dave, I know I've taken up a lot of your time. Thank you very much, and I'll put links to Bill Bartell and other of your works in this episode page, and we'll be talking again, sir.
Okay.
Cool.
Thanks for having me.
All good. Incredible film, The Secret Lives of Bill Bartell. Highly recommend it, not only for music fans and nerds like us, but also regular civilians. My wife loved it, and, she barely tolerates the sort of scene that I get into. So, again, The Secret Lives of Bill Bartell, available on streaming, lots of different places, and, of course, the DVD and the Blu-ray available at WeGotPowerFilms.com. And that's it for this episode of The Vinyl Guide. Thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate everyone who's sharing these episodes on social media, writing positive reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That is hugely appreciated. And we'll be back shortly with a brand new episode. So until we talk next time, you all behave yourselves. And thanks again for listening to The Vinyl Guide podcast. Cheers.